Welcome to Saturday versus Sunday. I'm John Barban, and today I want to talk about Cam Ward and the draft because no one else seems to be talking about Cam Ward. It seems like the Shedeur Sanders story got sucked all the oxygen out of the room, and the analysts are still going on that story. And it's like Ward and basically all the other players just sort of faded into the background. But Ward is the story of the draft. This guy was a 0-star recruit coming out of high school. He went to Incarnate Word. Then he transferred, he transferred to Washington State. He threw for a ton of yards at Washington State. He graduated from Washington State, and then he transferred to Miami as a grad transfer, and he played his final year in Miami. And he was a Heisman finalist, and obviously he became the number one pick. So this is a good underdog story of someone who everyone overlooked him in high school. And he started at a small school that no one would really know about, obviously not considered a football power by any means. And he just slowly worked his way up to higher competition, graduated, and now he made it all the way to the number one pick. So now all eyes should be on him in Tennessee to see, is this going to work out? I mean, the number one pick each year is always going to have a spotlight on them. But this is a good story of someone who was not expected to be here when he started his college career, but yet here he is. But then it also made me think of how rare it is for any draft pick to hit at all. So I started doing some research here, and I came across some research done by Pro Football Reference. And they did a study on all the draft picks from 1996 to 2016. So that's 20 years worth of data. And they were just trying to come up with the percentages of how many of these players hit. And they have their own kind of rating system here of approximate value, which incorporates the number of starts they make and if they made it a Pro Bowl and just a few other things to try to even out all the different players, whether or not they were on a good team or a bad team could potentially inflate their numbers here. So they try to make it a level metric here. But anyways, their data for 20 years of the NFL draft shows that about 17% of the players drafted didn't even play on the team that drafted them. Then 37% were considered just useless. So if they played, they barely played, and it wasn't good play. Then another 15% were considered poor. So they had limited playing time, but during that playing time, again, it wasn't that good, but it was slightly better than the category called totally useless. Then another 10% were considered average, and they define that by just mediocre players that started or had some contributions over 2 to 3 years. Again, that's not great. And then finally, we're at a category of players that were considered good. 12% of all of those drafted were considered good. And this is something above mediocre, something like average to good. And these are people who started multiple years beyond just the 2 or 3 year stretch. But that's only 12% of players that they're even considering good. And then beyond that, we have 7% of the players were considered great. So in this category, these were what you would consider a really good draft pick. And in order to be considered great, they would have had to have played for the team that drafted them into a second contract. So we're only talking about 7% of the players that were taken in the draft made it to a second contract for the team that drafted them. That's not very many. And then 1% were considered the Hall of Fame caliber players that eventually long careers, multiple Pro Bowls, that type of player. So that's not a very good hit rate. That's not good at all. So we've got roughly 8% of draft picks are going to be the type of player that make a real difference and actually sign a second contract on the team that drafted them. That doesn't sound like a lot. So when you break it all down, you can't really expect much out of any of these drafts, maybe 1 or 2 players to work out. I mean, as far as first round draft picks, only about 30% of first round draft picks actually end up signing a second contract for the team that drafted them. So we're talking about like exceedingly rare numbers. Like very few players are ever going to sign a second contract with the team that drafted them. On average, it's going to be one per draft class. If two sign a second contract with the team that drafted them, that's good. And if three do it, that's phenomenal. So we don't even, I mean, the odds of a first round pick signing a second contract is higher than all of the other rounds, but it's still not great. So you just don't know what's going to happen with these players. So when you see all these pundits talking about their draft grades, it's, oh yeah, this team got an A+ on their draft and this team got a B. Like, they don't know. And it doesn't even make sense grading a draft class before they ever even play in the NFL. All they're doing is grading off of what they hope these players might be based on how they rated them in college. So I've got some teams that I thought made good draft picks only because I enjoyed watching those players in college. And I'm hoping if they make it in the NFL, they'll all be just as much fun to watch in the NFL. But I have no idea if they're going to make it or not. So it's just, you just don't know. And grading draft classes just doesn't make any sense because you can't know until they start playing. So, I mean, I guess it's something to talk about in the off season when there's just no actual football going on. So I guess we can do the whole post draft class grade. But when you look back, you just never know how those classes are going to go until multiple years into their careers, and we see where these players all end up. And one of the ways I thought about doing this was just to illustrate like how you just don't know what's going to happen based on where people are drafted. I looked at the last 10 Super Bowls, and I was just looking at the quarterbacks that were in the last 10 Super Bowls and just where those quarterbacks were drafted. So if we go back to 2015, that was the Broncos versus the Carolina Panthers. It's Peyton Manning versus Cam Newton. So those are both first round picks, or both first overall picks in that Super Bowl. So that's actually kind of rare for the Super Bowl to have two first overall picks in it. It doesn't happen that often. I think the only other time that happened in the last 10 years was when the Rams played against the Bengals, Stafford against Burrow. Those are both number one picks as well, number one overall picks. But out of the last 10 years of Super Bowls, there was six different QBs won the Super Bowl because Mahomes won it multiple times, Brady won it multiple times, so they're kind of occupying multiple spots here. But only two first overall picks actually won the Super Bowl in the last 10 years. That's Stafford and Peyton Manning. So all the other quarterbacks were not the first overall pick who won the Super Bowl. Yes, multiple first overall picks were in it, but only two have actually won it. So Jalen Hurts, he was the 53rd overall pick. Mahomes was the 10th overall pick. Tom Brady is 199th. Everyone knows that story. Nick Foles, he's won the Super Bowl in the last 10 years, so he's the 88th overall pick. So we've got examples of players in all different rounds getting to and winning the Super Bowl, and in many cases, or in some of these cases, beating someone who was picked ahead of them. So we just don't know. I mean, maybe this is just obvious to everybody, but in all of this draft talk about grading drafts and this is going to be a franchise player, you don't know that. Like it's the hit rate based on the data is very, very low, and it doesn't really matter where you pick a player. You find out when they get on a roster and start playing the games at NFL speed. I mean, Purdy, he's been in the Super Bowl already, and he was the very last pick. So when you look at the range of draft positions, like Purdy being the last pick, Brady being the 199th, Burrow being the first, Hurts the 53rd, like it's all over the map. And that's just in the last 10 years. We have no idea which of these players, if any of them, are going to turn out and be this good. Could Cam Ward be the transformational player for the Titans? Maybe, but he could also just be okay, or he could just flame out. They could have just missed on the pick. That's all. But we also don't know that about any of the other QBs drafted. Just to circle back to the Shedeur thing and why everyone's been out of shape. I don't know why, because multiple players in this list just in the last 10 years have made the Super Bowl that were picked all the way down into the 6th round. So it just doesn't matter where people people get drafted. It just matters how they perform once they're on the team. So, I mean, I'm going to be excited to watch the Titans. Hopefully Ward works out. I mean, they made a bunch of other picks that, again, sound like they're going to be good, but we just won't know. And people will be talking about this for a while, but the only time you can really grade a draft class is, I don't know, 4 or 5 years after all of those players, 4 or 5 years after that draft. That's the only time you'll ever know. Right now it's just speculation based on what they thought of that player, their grading on whatever grading system they have, but none of that will matter once they start playing in the NFL. That's when you find out what you actually did in this draft and if they're any good or not. So, let me know what you think in the comments. Do you buy into this draft grading thing, or do you just kind of want to hold on to the hope that your team's draft grade is legit if it's good, and then it's BS if it's not? Or I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments about all this. And are you actually excited to watch Cam Ward play, or do you think he wasn't deserving of the number 1 pick? All right, we'll catch you later.